Comp versus casual is going to kill Splatoon 3. Okay, on second thoughts, that was a little bit dramatic. Let's be real here, Splatoon will probably survive, but if the community can't get past the comp versus casual divides, it won't grow, at least not to its full potential. And yes, I know what some of you are probably thinking, how much can the comp versus casual debate really impact Splatoon's growth? And the answer is, probably more than you realise, but don't worry because we're going to break it all down. One of the biggest barriers to Splatoon that has prevented it from breaking into the mass market on the same level as other Nintendo games like Mario Kart or other shooter games like Valorant has been the perception that it's a game just for kids. I think that one of the best ways to get around this is to highlight the game from a competitive standpoint. With shooter games being some of the most popular around and the esports industry growing rapidly year on year, neither show any signs of slowing down, and I want Splatoon to get in on that. But with the way that Nintendo advertised this game, they're missing out on thousands and thousands of potential new players who already exist within the shooter and esports genres just because they don't do anything to appeal to those audiences. Despite the fact that Splatoon 3 is on track to be the most successful game in the series yet, some of the reactions to it winning Best Multiplayer at the Game Awards show that the just the kids game stereotype is still very much around. But that's where Comp Splatoon comes in. Think about Fortnite, for example. When it first arrived on the scene, everyone thought the same thing. Oh, it's just for kids. But when people like NintenJas and Miss started playing at a higher level and competitive teams started becoming bigger influences in the community, that perception quickly started to change. The game was no longer just for kids, Fortnite's mass appeal grew and the game skyrocketed into popularity. This is what I think needs to happen for Splatoon, but there's a problem. The comp scene are, at this point, a minority within the Splatoon community, but for Comp Splatoon to grow, we need to utilise people power. But if they're a minority, that means that the support can't just come from the comp scene itself. It has to come from the casual side too, because that's where the numbers are. And that's why comp versus casual divides are doing more harm than good. The truth is, as much as Nintendo are responsible for creating this game that we all love so much, we simply cannot rely on them to get the full potential out of it. We've already seen that the advertising and marketing for this game can be questionable at the best of times. And with what's just happened in the Smash community, it's never been more obvious that Nintendo do not see the value in properly supporting their esports. That's why it's important that we do. We have to make the noise. We have to stand up and show Nintendo that the support is there and show that highlighting a more competitive side of the game is a good idea. Splatoon 3 being a new game is a fantastic opportunity. We've got a chance to really put Splatoon on the map. But Splatoon is also a relatively new franchise. We don't have 30 years of reputation to fall back on like Mario Kart does, for example. So if we're going to make the most of this opportunity, the comp community, the casual community, and everyone in between needs to start to work together a bit more. So now we know that the comp and casual sides of the community need to work together more. That's great. But just how do we do that? Well, to figure that one out, I needed to work out why the divides were happening in the first place. So I put the question out to the Splatoon community both on Twitter and Reddit to try and identify just what was going wrong. And after a couple days in the Splatosphere, I had my answer. Well, answers. You see, I found that most responses were able to fall into one of three categories: communication, accessibility, and visibility. But just how do we fix each of these? Well, let's break it down. This is the one most people probably think of when they think about the comp versus casual divide, and this was the one that prompted me to make this video in the first place. I noticed that pretty much every time comp and casual Splatoon clash, 90% of the problems that occur come from people having this attitude.
You disagree with me? Shut up. I'm right, you're wrong, shut up.
I got a couple comments from Raphios, I'm so sorry if I've said your name wrong by the way, who I think summed it up perfectly. A lack of mutually flowing ideas from a lack of communication in the majority of people on all ends of the argument seems to add isolation between the groups, as sides will not or refuse to admit that some things are significantly stronger and significantly weaker at different skill levels. For example, missiles are broken at top level of play but relatively meh at low level. While some comp and casual players players know this, it seems that most refuse to accept this fact. Top levels and casuals refuse to hear each other out, causing more division and a lack of understanding. And let me tell you guys, this is exactly what I keep seeing. Every time this happens, I see a lot of, oh, comp players are so annoying, they're so tryhard, and oh, casual players are so annoying, they don't know anything, and just generally a lot of like pointing the finger at the other side, when I think when it comes to this, the comp versus casual divide is caused pretty equally by comp and casual players purely because no one wants to listen to each other. My message to casual players is that comp players are filled with knowledge about the game. Obviously, you can have your own opinion, you are well entitled to that, but I've learnt so much about Splatoon through watching and listening to what comp players have to say, and you probably will too. It's absolutely a-okay to not know everything, and you do not have to go on the defensive straight away. And I really shouldn't have to say this, but someone isn't automatically just a sweaty tryhard because they want to win. And for comp players, I think it can be easy when it comes to something like missiles, which seems like common sense to you, to forget that it's not that obvious for everyone. But I think a lot of the problems come where instead of explaining why certain things are the way they are, we just tend to end up with comments like this. Chara left a comment where he does explain that the way competitive Splatoon works is very different to solo queue, but I think the problem is that I rarely see people actually explain the way Chara did. If everyone just took the time to listen to each other and explain a bit more rather than just complaining or making petty digs at each other, this really wouldn't be as much of a problem as it sometimes is. Okay, so moving swiftly on to accessibility, and if there's one conclusion I can make from this, it's that there's definitely more interest in competitive Splatoon than people realise. Even more so now that we're at the start of a new game, more and more people are interested in trying to get into comp, or trying to find a team, or just get more involved in the comp scene overall. But there is one glaringly obvious issue. A lot of people simply don't know where to start. I got a comment on Reddit which said, most of the reason competitive isn't known as well is because the community for it is only on Twitch and Discord, as well as not being easy to find. Even though Inkopolis Crosswalk is the Discord server to get to every other Splatoon Discord server, it isn't that popular with most players, even if they play Splatoon frequently. Now, while I don't agree that the comp community is only on Twitch and Discord, since you can find lots of individual comp players elsewhere, I do agree that most of the inner workings of comp Splatoon do take place on Discord. This idea is further backed up by a couple responses I got on Twitter. It took me a while to find the competitive community. It's not easily searchable on Google, and it's almost never promoted on places like Reddit. You have to find the right Discords, and they are not easy to find. You really have to want to join the comp community. I deadass probably wouldn't have joined if someone didn't link me to the Off the Dial server. Not out of a lack of interest, but a lack of knowledge. People unfamiliar with esports aren't going to know what a free agent is, or what a pickup is, or what divs mean, and all of that. If you don't know which servers to join and where to find them, trying to get properly into comp Splatoon can be difficult. It's even harder when you consider that most of us probably spend more time on our phones than any other device, and Discord, for whatever reason, doesn't have the search for servers feature on mobile. This means that you often really rely on needing a link to certain servers, otherwise it's a lost cause. And as for Twitch, well, we'll be getting to that later in the video, but what can we do to make comp Splatoon more accessible? Well, I'd argue that Splatoon's most active online community base is probably Twitter, so let's start there. For starters, I want to direct everyone to this account. They repost players who are looking for teams and teams who are looking for players. There are teams and players of all levels and all experiences posted, so you'll be likely to find someone of a similar level to you in a similar time zone without having to work your way through various Discord servers. Also, there used to be a comp Splatoon Twitter community group for a brief while, but I don't really know where it went. Either way, having something like that again could be really useful. You know, since you don't need links to Twitter communities, it's probably just a tiny bit more accessible than a Discord server. I just think that anything that lessens or eases the number of steps people have to go through to try and find people to play with and form teams with in the comp scene will help more people to start. So visibility and accessibility are pretty closely linked. More accessibility will mean more visibility. But for this section, we're going to be talking about the big C word, content. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, the number one This is, without a shadow of a doubt, the #1 way to get more casual players interested in competitive Splatoon. Solving accessibility issues will undoubtedly help, but that will still predominantly only appeal to people who are looking to start playing Splatoon competitively. On the other hand, content is the chance to appeal to everyone, whether they're interested in playing or not. Now, I want to make a callback to a comment that we looked at earlier that said the comp scene is only on Twitch and Discord. Some people are probably going to be wondering why being on Twitch is being made to sound like a problem, and the answer is, it's not. The problem is only being on Twitch. You've probably noticed that most Twitch streamers try to build up a following elsewhere as well, typically either YouTube or TikTok. And the reason for this is discovery. But don't just take my word for it, this guy's Toast talked about this in one of his videos last year too.
I always say if you want to start content creation, specifically streaming, to never start streaming as your first plan of action.
Putting your content somewhere else as well as Twitch is so important, not only because discovery can be difficult there, but because streams do not stay on Twitch forever. On Twitch you have two choices. You either see them in the moment when you're live, or you have 2 weeks to watch the VOD for anyone who's not partnered and then they're gone. If you're partnered, you've got a little bit longer, you've got about 2 months, but then they're gone too. Platforms like TikTok or YouTube have that long-term discovery aspect that Twitch simply does not have. If you're uploading VODs or even individual matches to somewhere like YouTube, or uploading highlights and other related content to TikTok or even Instagram Reels, you're then able to create a backlog of content that can exist and be gaining views for a lot longer than 2 weeks. You know, I'm quite often scrolling around these platforms and come across videos that are months, sometimes even years old. I've seen it myself with my own videos. I posted We Need to Talk About Clan Blitz back in February, and it was the first video on this channel to pick up any type of traction. It got about 1,000 views within the first couple weeks of being uploaded, which for a channel that was averaging around 100 at the time was huge. But that's not all, because that video has gradually kept gaining views ever since and now sits at close to 7,000. Now I'm going to bring you back to another comment that we saw earlier that says people unfamiliar with esports aren't going to know what a free agent or a pickup is or what divs mean and all that. If you're going to be making comp content, you're going to want to keep this in mind when creating your titles and thumbnails. If you want to attract more casual players into comp, you have to find a way to package that competitive content in a way that will appeal to the masses. Squid School, Chara, Dude, they're all great examples of doing this. They all make content about higher level play and the more technical aspects of the game, but they've been able to present it through their titles and thumbnails in a way that appeals to comp and casual players alike. You have to remember that if you're making competitive content, people who are new might not know certain terminology. If someone's new, there's a solid chance they're not going to know what something like a free agent is. You can explain all of that in your videos, but you have to get people in there first. And that is why packaging is so important. It's so important that we fix the comp versus casual divide in the Splatoon community. We all have a part to play in this, and if everyone does their bit, the sky's the limit for Splatoon's future. And if you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend you check out the one on screen now for another Splatoon discussion. But most importantly, stay positive, stay smiling, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!